Ann Speckhard, who joins me. She's the Associate Professor of Psychiatry at Georgetown University Medical School, and she's been honest enough to admit to me that she's lucky enough, folks, to be able to do a lot of her work from her office at home. So I'm jealous of you already, Ann. Welcome.
Well, I sit in front of a computer and write.
Welcome to the show. Thank you. And I want you to tell everyone, and we'll allude to it shortly, about your book called Talking to Terrorists. But let's get down to to what we're talking about, just to set the scene for everybody. You have done sort of, I think. Well, I'll let you explain it more relevantly than I possibly can. You're an expert on what's going on with the rebels in Chechnya. Let me just set it up that way. Chechnya is an area, folks, not too far away from Sochi. Its capital, Grozny, I might have pronounced that wrong, is only about 800 kilometers over the mountains and through the tunnels before you get to Sochi. So there's an unstable part of the world that's not far from where the Olympic Games are about to be held in 3 weeks' time. There's great concern over it. And I want to ask you the first question. Do you think you can say, in all honesty, knowing Chechnya the way that you do, that this Olympic Games in Sochi is going to be secure?
Well, Brian, that's a tough question. I fully expect that we're going to see more explosions. I don't know if they'll be actually inside the Olympic venue. I hope not, and I think the athletes themselves should be safe, and I'll tell you why I think that. And I can totally understand the hockey team in Canada deciding to leave their family members home. They need to be focused and not thinking about, are my kids safe, is my wife safe? So I can totally understand that. But I myself, if they want to send me their tickets to go, I would go in their place.
Yeah, but you'd be doing work.
Yeah, well, I've traveled a lot of places. I spent 10 years interviewing terrorists all around the world, and I studied the Chechens intensively. And what I can tell you about them is, in 1992, the Soviet Union fell apart.
Right.
Belarus, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, they all got their freedom. But the Chechens, who were inside of the Russian Federation, said, we want to break free. And Yeltsin said, no. The Russian Federation itself is staying intact. You can't break free. Chechnya also has oil. So that was another reason not to let them go. But they fought 2 wars over it. And around the year 2000, the rebel leader, Basayev, got convinced that he wasn't going to win against the Russians in a traditional war, although they were guerrilla fighters, that he needed to resort to terrorism. So a Middle Easterner convinced him to take on the martyrdom ideology like Al-Qaeda and to use suicide operations. Yeah. So since 2000, they've had over 115 suicide terrorists, over 25 lethal acts, and these include exploding internal airliners. 2 women exploded themselves on planes. They've exploded subways, buses, trains, government buildings, checkpoints. They took over 800 hostages in Moscow at a theater, and they also took over 1,300 mothers and children in Beslan at a school. So they are definitely capable. Oh, and then the Chechen terrorists, the movement spread through Ingushetia, Dagestan. These are all, like you said, about 800 kilometers away from Sochi. But the whole region has become infected, and Sochi itself doesn't have the movement, but these people are able to travel. I mean, they've traveled to Moscow, they traveled to Beslan to do their acts, and right now we're hearing on the news that there's 4 women. They're all dedicated to be suicide bombers. One of them is seriously believed to be inside Putin's Ring of Steel, and she is very dedicated, like all the so-called black widows. She is a widow. Not all of them are widows, but all of them in our research, we did psychological autopsies on them, and we found out that all of them, the men and women that went as suicide bombers, had a family member killed by the Russian forces. And in Rusana's case, one of the women, she was sitting in the car next to her husband when he was shot by the Russian forces, and she was wounded. She escaped. She lived, but now she wants to die. And she's vowed to avenge her husband's death.
Yes.
So she's lethal, that's for sure. And she's equipped by a group that's proven their capability to put bombs on women. And she's a woman, so she probably can pass checkpoints more easily. And
Why?
because she doesn't wear one of those black robes. Actually, the pictures that they're circulating of her, she's wearing this playful pink robe that she looks like a young, happy woman, and a scarf. But a Russian soldier that's patting her down is going to, well, now if they've been instructed to be really strict, they're going to think twice, because they don't want to anger the men of the region by getting too intimate with the women. And think of all the places that a woman can hide explosive liquids or grenades or even a bomb belt. You know, if a guy's afraid to pat down your chest or your stomach or your buttocks.
Right.
And some of these things can pass detection. You know, if you have you know, nowadays women wear these bras that are called gel bra, and I've thought for years, ever since mine got taken away from me in Israel, and the Israeli soldiers came back to me, the female soldiers, saying, we need to x-ray your bra again. And I was like, you're kidding. And then they came back and said, oh my God, this bra has gel in it. It's amazing. But then I thought, oh, how easy it is for a woman to, you know, imagine if you pumped that thing up with 10 times the amount of gel it has just for, you know, beauty reasons, and turned it into something that's carrying explosive liquids.
Unbelievable, and great insight into that. Can you tell me, and what is it about Chechnya? What are you just mentioned obviously what's going on between the Russians. What is it that's kept all of these different factions feuding with each other?
Well, the Russians don't want the Chechens to gain their independence. And they came down very heavy-handed. In the Second War, they carpet-bombed the capital, Grozny, and half the population fled. So that's an interesting point, too, now, because there's Chechens in Belgium, Australia, Netherlands. We had Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev in the U.S., who were originally Chechens that came on asylum. So there's Chechens with clean passports that may be sympathetic to this cause, and that may also show up in Sochi. And that must be a nightmare for Putin. But the thing that fuels this is that part of the world was conquered after the demise of the Ottoman Empire by the Russians. And Umarov, the leader of he calls it the Kafkaz Emirate, says you're not going to hold the Olympics on the bones of our dead ancestors, because the Circassians, who were also Muslims in that area, were either deported to Turkey when the Ottoman Empire fell, or they were killed. And so he's pumping that up to try to inflame this pro-Muslim sentiment of we're not part of Russia and we shouldn't be under Putin. And a lot of the Muslim population in the Caucasus feels that way, and they do live quite separate from Russian society.
Right. What is a white widow?
A white widow is it's one particular woman, and she's in Africa, in Kenya. Her name is Samantha Loosewaith, and she is truly a widow. She was married to Jermaine Lindsay, and Jermaine Lindsay was one of the 7/7 bombers in London. So he exploded a bus or the subway. And afterwards, just like Tamerlan Tsarnaev's widow, she said, oh, I'm so horrified, it's terrible, I had no idea. But then later she went to Kenya and herself became a very active terrorist, training others and placing explosives in bars where British soldiers went. And the SAS would love to get their hands on her. And but she has nothing to do with this movement other than she also adheres to this martyrdom ideology and has a symbolic or ideological affiliation with Al-Qaeda. She's more related to Al-Shabaab.
Dr. Ann Speckhard, who's an absolute expert on Chechen terrorists, is on the phone with me right now, and delighted to have her on board, international consulting expert on counter-terrorism. So, having spent my life covering very many special events, and I realized that when you get there, there's all kinds of things you can do. Some Olympic Games have had a lot more security than others, but to be honest with you, if you or I really want to get in and do some damage or do some harm, it's pretty hard to secure that it's never going to happen. But what I have found in the past is that much of the work to make the place secure is work that international intelligence agencies have done before, long before any of us arrive in their country to take care of things. Do you think that's the same situation right now with what the security forces are dealing with over there in regard to the Chechens?
Well, I would take some confidence in that because the Russian security forces have proven themselves to be corrupt. In the Beslan hostage-taking, the hostage-takers bragged to their hostages in a really sad and cynical way, "We bought you." They wanted to say, you know, look what kind of government you have. We were able to buy our way with bribes to come to the school and take you. Like, your government doesn't care about you. And which is true. Putin's government doesn't really care about their citizens. And soldiers are paid poorly and easily corrupted, especially in that region.
Wow.
And but one thing I would take comfort in, and the other thing, the president of Chechnya, the ex-president, well now dead president of Chechnya, Kadyrov, he was standing on a review stand for one of their patriotic days when the military might of Russia was parading by, and the Chechens had managed to get explosives under the review stand, and they exploded him. You know, at the time when he was supposed to be glorying in the military might of Russia, he was blown to smithereens. So this shows that they can infiltrate, they can pay people off to look the other way, but I would take comfort in that our Canadians, Americans, and Europeans are also deeply involved in the security right now.
Right.
So I don't think that they will be able to hide explosives inside the Olympic venue. And if there are explosions, I think they're going to be at train stations, at bus stations, at places outside of the Olympic venue. And I also think we should remind our listeners, if they're thinking about going, go and have a good time, cheer the home team on, and remember, you do go out and drive your car on snowy days. You can be killed by another car, and probably your chances of that are much higher, or getting struck by lightning. You know, it's just not real high odds it's going to be you. But I do think that they will attack in the region because, you know, this is a worldwide stage.
Yeah,
they want attention to their cause.
Exactly. So it's too big an opportunity to miss.
Right. But will they get actually inside the Olympic venue? I don't think so. And will they attack the athletes? People have asked me, will we see a Munich-style attack? And I would say I really rule it out because Umarov, the leader, was already embarrassed by Beslan. When his predecessor took Beslan, there was worldwide outrage. So Arabs that had been supporting them said, you went too far. You shouldn't have taken women and children. And I'm sure when he's calculating how far should I go, what things will win me support, he knows that going in and gunning down athletes is something that's going too far. And I don't think, unless it was to attack the Russian athletes, but I think even then he wouldn't do it. That part of the world, and they're like us, everyone loves their athletes.
You can only imagine how popular they would be within their group, however misguided, and whatever their motivation had been and how much suffering or whatever they saw they'd had over the years. If one of those groups managed to get their hands on somebody like Alex Ovechkin, the star of the Russian hockey team, they wanted to draw attention to their cause around the world against Russia and everything else they had angst against Russia about. I mean,
that's for sure. Or if they, can you imagine if they were able to place explosives under the review stand of the Russian delegation of officials?
Or that type of thing.